So I'm here with Corin Nemec, one of the co-stars of this really awesome Western called Place of Bones. Last 2 years, Corin, you've been in sort of the Western world as a co-writer and ensemble of Dead Man's Hand, and now with Place of Bones. What has that been like, just to be able to shoot Westerns? Has this always been a youthful dream of yours as far as the genre?
Hey, you know what? It's been on my bucket list since I first started acting. My one of my first, the first movie I ever did, the movie Tucker, that Francis Ford Coppola directed. I was playing Jeff Bridges' son in that, and that was a period piece taking place in the 1940s. And doing period pieces is just an incredible, great experience. I got to do, a low budget World War II movie over in Bulgaria. I loved the World War II thing. I've gotten to do some 60s stuff and then obviously the space opera stuff with Stargate and whatnot, and a lot of different genres. But I never got anything in the Western genre, and it just ate me alive. And then my buddy Brian Skiba, who directed, we produced Rotten Tail together, which was a Source Point Press published graphic novel that we turned into a horror comedy called Rotten Tail. And then I did a bunch of other movies with him, and he had the chance to turn one of Source Point Press's other graphic novels, Dead Man's Hand, into a script, and gave me the shot at doing the first draft of it, which was tough. And I think I delivered a great first draft, and he did his director's draft on it, the shooting draft, and they made a fun movie with Stephen Dorff and Cole Hauser and Jack Kilmer, a great cast. And what helped, because of that, shortly after that, I ended up getting Place of Bones, and it was so fortuitous because to write that script, I had to, when I write my scripts, I do as much research as I'm allowed time for. I'm really into that. I think that the more that I can get a hold of the time period and understand the time period, the more I can bring the time period to life within a screenplay. And so I had just done all this research on what it was like there, what people were like, what the world was really like. The fact that one of the only books that anybody really ever had was a freaking Bible, was a Bible, and that's it. And so a lot of their analogies were biblical references and all this, and so it was interesting to suddenly get this incredible script by Richard Taylor that was so well written, it's so well researched. I mean, this guy is a Wild West fanatic. And this script is one of his babies. It's one of the ones that he wrote because he had to write it. He never, it was because I've done the same thing as him. I have a stack of scripts, 5 feet high of stories that I just had to write because I had to get them out of my head. And that's why this script is so magical, because it's not something that's formulaic, that went through the studio or network system where the script came in one way and then they're like, oh, well, this doesn't happen on page 8, this doesn't happen on page 15, we need to restructure, we need to bring something in, and next thing you know, you no longer have your script anymore, or you're forced to write your script based on that formula. So as a writer, it's unique because you can use the formula to your benefit, and it simplifies things, but also it strips away a lot of that organic just storytelling and natural pacing, that lacks in films today. And so this, Richard Taylor did a fantastic job. I don't even know how Audrey Cummings got a hold of this script. I'm not sure. I know that David Lipper had something to do with all of this. He's the reason why I got cast in it. God bless him. And then auditioning for Heather Graham and Audrey Cummings, the director, it sealed the deal. But I had done a small role in another film that David Lipper had produced, called Joe Baby, with Harvey Keitel and Ron Perlman and Deacon Lockman, and I did a really interesting performance in a really small role, and that's what got his attention, for this role. And thank God he let me audition for it, and thank God he gave me the opportunity to bring this character to life, because whatever happens with this film, I think it will take on a life of its own online. I think it's so smartly written, and I think it has such a magical twist at the end that I can only say the only other movie I've ever come across in the history of film that got me the way this one did was Sixth Sense. I wasn't ready for Sixth Sense, and I don't think people are going to be ready for this, and I think it's going to be, a go-to film for folks, and it'll be shared a lot. I'm so happy to be a part of it. And Heather Graham was great to work with. Tom Hopper, great to work with. Brielle, Robillard, fantastic to work with. Our cinematographer, Andres. I'm not even going to say his last name because I murder it every time. But I mean, the dude did Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? This is our cinematographer. He's coming with that real, that real vision that Audrey needs to filter her storytelling through. Somebody who's tried and true and has done this kind of storytelling with a camera before. It's magical. Every moment is a photograph.
Ron, I had no idea. You said in your office or wherever it's located, you have a stack of scripts. We're around the same age. When did that love for writing stories begin for you? Because you mentioned that first draft of Dead Man's Hand. By then, you were probably a very veteran writer because you had that stack. And I might strike out on this question, but did your early passion for graffiti art, is there a correlation between your passion for that practice? Did that free you up as a writer as well? Wondering about that.
Well, yeah, man. Well, listen, dude. The graffiti art. That's like, for me. That's the center. That's the center point for everything. That's where I met the actors that I met, young actors that I met. This guy David Van Gorder, who I first got into. The first acting class I ever was in with Kevin McDermott, Center Stage LA. He was famous at the time for being Waldo in the Hot for Teacher video by Van Halen. And we were in the same graphic arts class in 8th grade. And the only reason why we started talking is because he saw me tagging in my book. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, man, I tag too." And I'm like, "What? You're an actor. You don't tag." He's like, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Wait, actors can be graffiti writers? Like, that's okay to do?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, I'm in a great acting class and whatnot and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "What?" So I started studying in the acting class. And then I was friends with David Arquette, who was a graffiti artist back in the day, and Balthazar Getty, who was a graffiti artist back in the day. And, and that's how I met up with Brian Green. Even he wasn't a graffiti writer, but he was really into the hip hop culture and the hip hop scene. And we went to North Hollywood High together. And, so that whole culture is what drew me into that world, and being freed up, being kind of how you have to be in the graffiti culture. You have to be fearless. You can't go to a graffiti yard like a timid rabbit, you know what I mean? So it also made me also fearless to a degree in my performances as well, not being afraid to push the envelope and take real chances and really try to develop a four-dimensional character for people. And this character, Austin Calhoun, is all that and then some, again, Richard Taylor's writing, the characters that he created in here, you really feel them. There's my character's an anti-hero. He's a bank robber, but you shouldn't like him, but you can't help but like him. But that's the writing, the genius of the writing.
Several months ago, you released a book creating a character for the stage or life, and it spotlights something called the New Era Acting Technique. Now, how were you able to apply this new era acting technique for Calhoun, a character who you said it's an anti-hero, but he's also, without giving too much away, stationary? It must have been a very physically demanding role for you. So.
Yes, it was. Well, it was so cold. It was so cold when we were shooting. We were shooting in December, in late December and early January. In the high desert. It was cold, man. So I didn't mind just having to, be in a bed covered in blankets for the most part. I was like, dude, I'm okay here. I'll just stay. But the new era acting technique is a technique that I studied with Manu Tupou at the American Repertory Company over a period of 10 years, from the 90s into the early 2000s till he passed away in 2005. And it's one of the most magical techniques I'd ever been introduced to in my life. It's a combination of kind of Eastern spiritualism in a way meets acting and imaginary creative techniques that are used to develop an internal world for the character. So it's in creating the backstory, for instance, for Austin Calhoun, I had to work with a great dialect coach that they brought on. And again, I don't have her name here, and I feel so bad about it, but she was so great. And it's in the researching of the character that reality becomes real inside of my mind. So I'm not just saying dialogue and repeating things that are written about, like, say, an event that occurred. If I'm talking about, a bank robbery, and I'm explaining a bank robbery to somebody in present time, I also have to be reliving the bank robbery in my in mental image pictures in my mind, because that's how what happens in real life. When someone comes running in the door and they're like, "You can't believe what just happened to me. I walked into the McDonald's and this guy came in with a shotgun and he was about to shoot people, and I grabbed the shotgun and I raised it up in the air, dude, and he shot it." They go into the moment, so that the background, the history, all of that has to be created in such a way that the living experience of the character is multidimensional like that. They're not just talking about an experience, they're reliving it, and therefore they're expressing words about what they're reliving internally. And that was really the method that he developed, and that can apply to life as well. This creating a character and dropping of a character, since we're all characters, without getting too deep on it, because I don't want to go in the weeds on this, because Place of Bones is the focus. But that we can drop our character at any time we want and develop a new character for ourselves if we choose to. That nothing's permanent. Personality isn't fixed. It's not a fixed thing. We get focused and so fixated on it that it becomes solidified, and we get locked into a personality that we can never get out of. And you become that personality the rest of your lives, for better or for worse. When at any given time, because the personality is just a complex structure of metaphysical attention units, holding it in place, if you release those attention units and you let that go, the idea of self, that's where the spiritual side of it comes in. Then you can breathe and start to play with personality and character and all of that, and get out of this fixed state of consciousness. So that's what that book kind of dives into. And so playing, Austin Calhoun, using the new era acting technique, being stuck in a position where I'm fixed in a place for so long, then that world that has to become very, very multidimensional, so that when the audience is watching me just sit there, they're not watching me just sit there. They're with me on all of the rides and the experiences and everything else that's being discussed or whatever.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Really love Place of Bones, as well as Dead Man's Hand, by the way, and really looking forward to more of your work.
Yes, yeah. Everybody, man, go placeofbonesmovie.com. Follow everybody. All you have to do is just kind of look it up out there, look up a hashtag on X or whatever, and start following everybody involved, because there's some great people, and Audrey Cummings has a huge career ahead of her. She's going to explode after this. I can guarantee that.
Thanks again. You take care.
You bet, Greg.